Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. Hey, boy, don't feel my world untrue. Yeah, I want to talk to you. My world can be true if you do what I tell you to. I want to talk to you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio for Saturday, 8th of August, 2015. I'm your host, Larry Love, and we're here every Saturday to bring you a new show with information on medical marijuana and adult use from all over the globe and wherever it's legal, and we talk about where it's not legal as well. This week, I had a chance to go to a great organization, Women Grow, had an event in Albuquerque where they had a panel of extraction artists and tincture makers, and I pulled some very interesting clips, and we'll also have an update on the condition of Nick and Aaron, who were hurt in the BHO accident. So, but first, as always, I've got news for you.
1, 2, 3.
That's right. Always news.
I've got news for you.
And the first story here is marijuana closer to making it off the schedule drug list by Laura Broadbeck from a website called Bazinga, bazinga.com. Despite the fact that it has become legal in many states across the United States, marijuana is still seen as a criminal substance in the eyes of the federal government. That means at a federal level, marijuana is listed alongside drugs like heroin, LSD, as a Schedule I drug with no known medical uses. The classification has made it difficult for researchers to test the effects of marijuana on certain illnesses and has created a host of questions as how the conflicting laws will impact the industry as a whole. The DEA remarks, however, advocates for full-blown marijuana legalization in the United States has moved one step closer to their goal this week after the Drug Enforcement Administration made a statement indicating that its view on marijuana is shifting. DEA Acting Chief Chuck Rosenberg remarked on Wednesday that, quote, heroin is clearly more dangerous than marijuana, end quote. While that may not seem like much, the marijuana... excuse me, repagination. However, it may not seem like much. The marijuana community has considered it a win on the ongoing battle with legislators over the drug's status. Why does it matter? Well, new studies on the effects of marijuana, both long-term and short-term, have suggested that the drug isn't as dangerous as previously believed. Welcome to the club. However, while public opinion in the United States has shifted, the DEA has remained adamant about the drug's place on the Schedule I drug list. The DEA also challenged Obama's decision to allow states to make their own decisions regarding marijuana legislation, making the industry's future uncertain. The latest comments suggest that the DEA might be changing its mind and could eventually get on board with legal marijuana. For now, the federal law still prohibits the drug, and until that legislation is changed, the agency will continue to regard marijuana as a criminal offense. However, the DEA's more relaxed attitude could help promote change in Washington in the coming years. So it looks like they're slowly coming around, and hopefully before President Obama leaves office that we can get this thing fixed. Just my opinion. Next up, this is from medicalkidnap.com, and this is about Shona Banda, who was a guest on this show a couple of years ago. She's fighting not just Crohn's disease, but now she's fighting the law and federal law. This is about Shona. Mother files federal lawsuit against the state of Kansas for kidnapping her son. Shona Banda's lawyers file federal civil rights lawsuit against the state of Kansas. Attorneys representing cannabis oil activist and Crohn's disease patient Shona Banda have filed a federal lawsuit against the state of Kansas, alleging that Banda's civil rights were violated when her 11-year-old son was taken into custody after he spoke about his mother's successful medical marijuana therapy during a public school anti-drug presentation. This is written by Barry Donegan from Truth and Media. Attorneys Sarah Swain and Matthew Pappas have filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the state of Kansas and its Department for Children and Families on behalf of cannabis oil activist and Crohn's disease patient Shona Banda, whose 11-year-old son was taken by authorities in April of this year after he spoke about his mother's successful medical marijuana treatment during a public school anti-drug presentation. After Banda's son was seized by the state, Garden City, Kansas police raided her home on the basis of an unauthorized interrogation of her son, allegedly finding cannabis oil, constituents, and paraphernalia used to make it, and charged her with 5 criminal charges. Banda faces over 30 years in prison if convicted. Authorities claimed that DCF seized Banda's son because evidence related to her alleged use as a manufacturer of cannabis oil was found within reach of her child. Banda's legal team will reportedly argue that her use of cannabis was medicinal in nature and that the substance is less toxic than other legal household items and medications. In his interview with the Garden City Telegram, Pappas cited prior case law that upheld a parent's right to custody of a child as fundamental under the Civil Rights Act of 1871. So we wish Shona obviously the best, and hopefully we can get her on the show when she has time to do it. So that's that news. Now, of course, we have a election coming up, and as I find people's position on what they think of cannabis medicinally or adult use wise, I will update all of us on that. Here's Marco Rubio, a Floridian who's running for president under the Republican ticket, and here is Marco Rubio on medical marijuana.
Senator Marco Rubio also joining us live from C-SPAN. Senator, good evening. Should medical marijuana be a narrowly written law, or is it okay to have conflicting laws in certain states?
I don't support the legalization of marijuana. I understand that individual states are going through the debate of its use for medicinal purposes. I know in Florida that debate's ongoing. And as long as it truly is for medicinal purposes, and even at the national level, goes through, for example, the FDA process that any other medicine would have to go through, that's something I'm willing to explore. What I do not support is the legalization of marijuana or any other additional intoxicant. This country is already paying a significant price for illegal use of drugs and even alcohol, which is legal. You talk about New Hampshire for a moment. One of the stories that has not been as reported nationally is the fact that many of the people who today that are dependent on heroin are because they became dependent on prescription opiates. And when it became difficult to acquire those prescription opiates through the pharmacy system, they unfortunately became hooked on opium and heroin in the streets as a result of it. And so I'm not in support of any additional intoxicants being legalized, something like marijuana. For medicinal purposes, if it underwent an FDA process and it was truly designed to be used as medicine, not as a way to get high, you know, that's something I would be willing to explore.
Well, obviously he's got his head in the sand because we all know that intoxicants such as alcohol certainly are way worse than cannabis, and he's just a naysayer. We got to be careful of him. I don't think he's going anywhere anyway. Next up, New York State is just ramping up production. They just last week announced who was going to have the licenses to grow and dispense cannabis in their medical program. So I have a couple of stories on this. The first one, that license holders are racing to get ready for marijuana production, and I'm hoping that here in New Mexico they will announce the awarding of licenses very soon for the new licensees, so that they can get up and running and people can have their jobs starting and get to work to help people get medical cannabis. So here is a couple of stories on New York.
Medical marijuana will soon be produced here in New York, and the 5 companies granted licenses by the state last week are already at work.
Tori Wells traveled to Chestertown in Warren County today to learn more about one company's plan to produce that drug.
This barn will become Etane's production facility. This is where the company will grow and produce medical marijuana. Etane says it has building permits, and construction here will start tomorrow.
Right now, horse stalls stand inside this barn. Etane CEO Hillary Peckham showing us what will be.
All of these stalls will be knocked down, probably up to that one, and right in there will be the extraction machine, and that needs to be in a secured room.
The production facility is where the company will grow, produce, and package medical marijuana as pills, oil, and oral spray, and vaporizing pen. Security will be visible outside with fencing and will be a focus inside as well. Peckham says they're working with security experts. You'll have security cameras inside.
Yeah, we plan to have 24-hour surveillance.
She expects about 20 to 25 jobs to be created at this facility initially. A few more at their 4 dispensaries, one which will be located in Albany.
It's something we need in this region. We need jobs.
Etane is a family-owned female company headed by a mother and her daughters. And for the Peckhams, this is personal.
My grandmother passed away from ALS, and during her decline she was put on 18 different medications, and a doctor had recommended we use medical marijuana during that time, and she wasn't comfortable with it because it was illegal.
Peckham says she thinks this is a key time for the medical marijuana industry, an opportunity for the community to see this as medicine. She says this facility will house a lab, and the state requires outside lab testing as well.
Etane says that the greenhouse will be built right here, and it expects to be growing within 6 to 10 weeks. The state wants patients to have access to this medical marijuana in the beginning of next year. In Warren County, Tori Wells, CBS 6 News.
So also here is a family in New York of women who got awarded a license, and they're weighing in on the medical marijuana license and the decisions.
Some local families, many of whom have fought to get medical marijuana legalized in New York. Tonight we spoke with Christine Emerson, whose daughter has epilepsy. She's elated the state kept to the deadline and this process is moving forward, but she has some concerns.
So the highest one was like 97.
Christine Emerson has waited patiently for this day to come. It's a major milestone for New York State and her family. Her daughter Julia has epilepsy. In a matter of months, medical marijuana shown to significantly decrease grand mal seizures will be available right here in Rochester. But with this good news is some disappointment about the company selected to dispense it.
None of them have reached out to any of the parents to see, what the needs were or what any of the issues were. And I'm just wondering, is their heart in the right spot? Are they really looking to do what's right for the suffering New Yorkers and especially the children? Sometimes I fear that the bottom line is going to be money.
8-year-old Julia was diagnosed with refractory epilepsy 4 years ago. The family has tried 14 different medications. Emerson says none has provided much relief for Julia without significant side effects. She's had as many as 80 seizures a month. But Emerson says it's about more than just getting medical marijuana.
The biggest thing is quality. We have to make sure, our children are ingesting this, and so we have to make sure the quality is there. But in addition to that, I do believe that the state is going to set a price point, and this may be, financially impossible for some families.
But while there is disappointment, and Emerson says much work to do, there is a reason to celebrate.
You know, I get goosebumps thinking that, you know, in a couple of short months there's going to be, you know, medicine here for Julia to have access to, and, you know, we just need more tools in our toolbox to treat her and, you know, hopefully relieve her of more seizures.
Emerson says medical marijuana is costing some families $500 to $600 a month because it's not covered by insurance. These are families who travel to other states. She says the federal government would have to recognize it as a legal treatment option for insurance companies to pick up the cost. That's the next battle for families.
And of course, that will be happening over the next few years. This is a real medicine, and as soon as we get rid of the federal interference, there will be subsidies to help people pay for their this medicine, which is a great medicine. Now here's a police chief in that area as well of New York, who's obviously has some problems, as law enforcement always does.
How are we going to control yet another drug?
Tonight, a local police chief tells us he has concerns about what medical marijuana will mean for the state and our region. He's concerned about the addictive effects of medical marijuana and the impact it might have on the public.
The Brockport police chief says he's not opposed to medical marijuana, but he has questions. His concerns come just 4 days after we learned a medical marijuana growing facility and dispensary will open at the Eastman Business Park.
New at 11, Lynette Adams spoke with the Brockport police chief himself. She's live at Eastman Business Park. Now, Lynette, what questions does he want answers for tonight?
Well, he's concerned mostly about addiction. Before Daniel Valenti was the chief of police in Brockport, he spent 14 years undercover and supervising narcotics enforcement for the Irondequoit Police Department. And so he says he's seen firsthand the impact of illegal drugs and addiction.
If we can't control alcoholism, if we can't control cigarette addiction and tobacco, then how are we going to control yet another drug?
Daniel Valenti doesn't want to come across as negative or as a naysayer. After news that Rochester will be one of 5 sites across the state growing and dispensing medical marijuana. But he says marijuana now joins a growing list of illegal narcotics that have been legalized for medical purpose and have made their way into the wrong hands.
I don't want to sound like the doom and gloom type of person. If I had a family member or a loved one that suffered from any one of those diseases, I would be fighting tooth and nail to say I want to get them help. On the same token, I just don't know if the bigger picture is being looked at. But it shouldn't be just about marijuana.
Valenti wants to make that clear. He isn't against using marijuana to treat ailments in a way that will give people a better quality of life. However, Valenti also headed a multi-agency drug task force, which included 6 different police agencies in Monroe County. And he says despite tight controls, other addictive drugs made their way onto the streets.
In my opinion, after 14 years of being involved in narcotics enforcement, I don't believe we've yet begun to scratch the surface of what to do with addiction. And yet we're continuing to add more and more drugs to the addictive nature of people. I think we're going to fail as a society bigger than we've already failed.
Now, the state says all of the companies that will make and dispense medical marijuana will have to adhere to the strictest guidelines or risk losing their licenses. And people who suffer from chronic illnesses who will benefit from the use of medical marijuana argue why register with the state, pay the estimated $250 it will cost to get medical marijuana, only to sell it on the streets. They say they will argue it just doesn't make sense. We're live on West Ridge Road. Lynette Adams, News 10 NBC.
Okay, so, I mean, obviously there are people that have been in law enforcement for their whole lives, and they have a certain predisposition to drugs, and marijuana, cannabis has been, classified as a bad drug for all these years. So it's hard for them to come around, but it seems that they are. But we're moving forward with these medical and hopefully adult use states. Next year's election is going to be very crucial, and cannabis will play a big part in that. Now, fibromyalgia is a condition that many women have, and also some men. Terrible pain constantly, and of course there's now it's finding that cannabis can ease the pain of fibromyalgia. Here is this report.
I grew up in a very small town It's not that I didn't try pot when I was little, you know, in high school. Had a couple of, you know, puffs on a joint, and that was it. You know, I didn't do that. Was the good girl, came home, I got married, had kids, raised my kids. My name is Belinda Heathcox. I am diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and anyone who has that diagnosis understands that some days, even though you don't look it on the outside, you're in pain 24/7. And then you have your flare-ups. The flare-ups are so horrible that all I want to do is sleep and lay in my bed and don't let anybody touch me. I can't have my grandkids hold me. It's very hard. I was raped down in El Paso, Texas, and now I'm diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Throughout the years of fibromyalgia and post-traumatic stress disorder, I have been on medicine. They put me on Oxycontin, they put me on oxycodone, they put me on Vicodin, they put me on Xanax, they put me on Ambien to sleep. I walked around like a 100-year-old woman with bags and bags and bags of narcotics. I thought they wanted to kill me. When the fibromyalgia set in, my son was about 16, and he's seen the pain that I was in. And to my surprise, he pulled out a joint and handed it to me and said, "Mom, I think you need this more than me." And I didn't know whether or not to yell at him or take him up on it, so I did. I haven't had a flare-up probably twice since 1997. This makes my life tolerable. It's unfair. It's unfair that we can't have our medicine. When I decided to start using cannabis, I no longer need any pain medication anymore. I have it on record in my doctor's office that if I needed a prescription, I haven't used it. My name is Belinda Heathcox, and I choose cannabis.
Please let your friends and family know that there are people out there using cannabis to fight their pain and problems from fibromyalgia. So this is very, very important, and spread the word. Okay, we'll be right back with some clips from this week's Albuquerque Women Grow. And for those of you that are in other states, we are a national show. We're just a microcosm here of what's going on in new states that are getting medical cannabis, and the extraction process, and using BHO, butane hash oil, to fight our afflictions is very important. So it's getting controversial. We had a terrible accident here a couple of weeks ago, and I'll play you some clips from the Women Grow meeting in Albuquerque right after these words.
It's all about the 420 MMJRadio.
In 1973, under President Nixon, the federal government set up 5 drug classifications based on risk, Schedule 1 being the most dangerous. What is considered a Schedule 1 drug? Marijuana, LSD, and heroin. What is a Schedule 2 drug? Cocaine. What is a Schedule 3 drug? Anabolic steroids. What is a Schedule 4 drug? Valium. Schedule 5 drugs are considered the least risky. What is considered the least risky drug? Cough preparations with less than 200 milligrams of codeine. And what drugs are not scheduled at all? Alcohol and cigarettes. Why does the federal government consider tobacco and alcohol a low risk and marijuana a high risk? If you answered, "I don't know," you answered right. We don't know either. End prohibition now.
I'm Robert Platshorn with Marijuana Facts from the Silver Tour. A new Florida study in the Journal of Molecular and Cellular Neuroscience found that cannabis can slow the effects of Alzheimer's and may in fact be able to halt it entirely. A University of Ohio study showed that people who use marijuana get Alzheimer's at a much lower rate than non-users. Learn more and support the truth at thesilvertour.org. That's thesilvertour.org.
Hi, as you know, over the next few years, the cannabis industry is going to explode into a multi-million-dollar industry. 420webdesign.com is your affordable design provider. 420 Web Design prides themselves on fair prices and a grounded staff. They listen to their ganjapreneurs' website needs. Getting into the marijuana industry doesn't need to break your bank. Our sites come with tons of features. Just a few of them include responsive designs for mobile viewers, easy to update platforms, built-in SEO and SMO tools, enterprise-level security, video tutorials, database backups, Google Maps, onboard analytics, and much more. This is backed by a decade of website design and development experience. For all of your 420 web design needs, go to 420webdesign.com. Again, 420webdesign.com. Check them out.
Have you ever had a problem with overcooking your cannabis oil? You probably wanted to rip your hair out when you burned off all the THC, right? I even cried one time when my brownies failed to make a good impression at the party. Well, I stopped crying when I found Magical Butter. Magical Butter is a device with a microprocessor-controlled program sequencer. It was designed by a scientist and a chemist to precisely extract the benefits of various herbs. Magical Butter easily makes botanical butter, oils, tinctures, lotions, sauces, and more. Magical Butter heats your oil and your herbs at the perfect temperature every time. Check us out at magicalbutter.com because it's magical. Okay, there's a lot of science and chemistry involved, but it sure works like magic.
Again, for your tinctures, butter, and oils, that's magicalbutter.com. This is a great appliance. Use coupon code LOVE to get $20 off.
This is Robert Platshorn with Marijuana Facts from the Silver Tour. According to the DEA's administrative law judge, Francis L. Young, marijuana in its natural form is one of the safest therapeutically active substances known to man. In strict medical terms, marijuana is far safer than many foods we commonly consume. Learn more and support more education at thesilvertour.org. That's thesilvertour.org.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show.
Hey, this is Scott from Rare Dangness. You're listening to Medical Marijuana Radio.
Okay, we are back. Again, this past Thursday, I had a chance to go to my first experience with Women Grow Albuquerque. Women Grow is a great organization, started in Colorado, I believe, by Jane West, and now they're affiliates in many states all over the country. This week in Albuquerque, they had over 80 people, which I thought was quite commendable. And there was a panel of expert extractors, a gentleman named Eric from Bang, who makes the wonderful chocolate bars, Ben Barreras from Herbal Edibles, Carlos Torres from Sacred Garden, and Rachel Hesheimer from Sacred Garden. So I pulled some clips that I thought were important to patients and important to our program here in New Mexico. So let's start playing them now. The first one is a little bit of Ben Barreras' introduction and how important, of course, BHO is and how you have to be careful, and a little bit of an update on Nick Montoya. So here is Ben Barreras.
My name is Ben. I'm with Herbal Edibles. I've been doing BHO extractions for the New Mexico program for about 5 years now. I've been working safely indoors in a lab with no explosions and not even so much as a valve leak. I've worked for a number of the producers, Sacred Garden, first there, Budding Hope, Grassroots, Veritas Foundation, of course. So I have a fair amount of experience doing this, and I think in light of recent events. I want to share a lot of my safety protocol with you guys because I know BHO is a big part of this market. It accounts for 40% of our industry's revenue. And I want to share everything that I've learned in my experience with everyone else here so we don't end up making the same mistakes that this most recent producer has. So, without further ado. Okay, the point of this is to get your lab to a place where it needs to be so you can safely produce this medicine without any risk of immolation. And basically what it boils down to is safety checks and redundancy. Like one safety check after another safety check after another safety check. You cannot have enough, and I cannot stress this enough. There are no accidents with BHO. I went to go see Nick Montoya over at the hospital, and if that boy doesn't live, like, it is not going to be a life he wants to live. He is that bad, that messed up, and the moment that you let your ego get ahead of this production process, that's how you end up like that. And we need to take responsibility as an industry to not end up like that. There are too many patients counting on us, counting on these extractors to make this medicine for all of their afflictions. We cannot afford to screw this up.
So, of course, Ben went on and talked about procedures and so forth, but staying on the topic of an update on Nick Montoya and Aaron Smith, here is Rachel Spiegel of Verdes Foundation, who is a nurse, and she explains a little bit more technically and medically what's going on in the current update on Nick and Aaron.
So I was just going to give you guys a couple details on the situation that Ben was discussing with you. The really sad, unfortunate experience that happened to New Mexican. So the update that we have at this point is Len Goodman of New Mexican sent out an email this afternoon stating that they had an inspection done today by the equipment manufacturer. A woman came to their dispensary, looked at the equipment. They're not sure as of right now what could have caused the butane leak. All the seals look like they were solid. Everything looks like it was within the pressure ratings. Nothing was obvious, which is kind of frustrating for them. I think they were hoping for something more obvious. There was a fire marshal that went to the property and did an inspection. The only thing as of right now that they could think of is they have a lock on the door that's magnetized, and as the lock was closing, there could have been a spark that ignited. They don't know why there was so much butane available to ignite in the first place. So I don't have any good information on what the cause was or how to prevent it. And that's why at the Verdes Foundation we're not extracting, and I have many, many angry emails to answer every day as to why we don't have products on our counter, cookies and all those good things that people are used to getting. So as far as Nick's condition goes, Nick is in the ICU critical care trauma unit at UNM Hospital. So is Aaron. And so Nick was severely burned in his face, in his throat, in his lungs. His trachea is compromised. He's on a ventilator, negative pressure life support. A negative pressure ventilator is the most aggressive form of ventilation. He has already been coded twice. He's flatlined. He's not there. He's septic. If those of you who have worked in the medical field understand that burns lead to sepsis, and so the burn is only a really small piece of the puzzle, and there's a really long healing process. His parents have him as a full code, so they're doing everything that they can. He's on a 2-to-1, meaning 2 nurses to 1 patient. That's how many lines he has set up. He's in an induced coma and non-operable at this time. They're just trying to keep him stabilized and his vitals stable. We're working with Scepter Labs in creating a vigil. So at some point in the next few days, for the family's sake, we're trying to find a location to do a candlelight vigil to bring everybody together to show the family the community support so that they understand how important this young man is to our community. And then Aaron has been, he was spared a little bit more because his burns are on his hands. And so with his hands being so badly affected, he's in a state of controlled sepsis. So he's on high amounts of antibiotics. And he's already undergone surgical procedures to do skin grafting and to get him ready for what is to come. So that's the update. I'm sorry I don't have anything more definitive.
Well, that's obviously a current update and very sad, and hopefully this type of accident will not happen again. Now, the New Mexico Medical Cannabis Program, who makes the rules here in New Mexico, has decided that they want to cap the THC content of extractions and concentrates to 70%, which dumbs down the medicine. You have to put additives in. Patients will have to buy more to get the same effect that they're currently getting because they're getting less of a concentrate and less strength. So here is the reaction and what the extractors think about the 70% cap and how they may deal with it.
I'll let you guys actually, before I take off with this, but I'd like to ask you all what you think and what your perspectives are individually on capping the THC levels at 70%, whether you're in favor of it or whether you're opposed to it and your reason why. I'm going to start with Rachel, Ben.
Okay.
I would say I'm not in favor of it because I find with topicals, when you bump up the concentration, it just makes them that much more effective. There is a theory in herbal medicine that when you can extract different components of the plant and then bring them back together in a form that is more biologically available, it changes the whole situation. There's something that, there's whole plant extractions coming up where you're taking the whole plant from the roots to the stems to the flowers to the leaves, and you're extracting every single part of that plant, bringing it back together, and you're retaining all the medicinal components of that plant. By limiting the concentration of THC in a product like that, especially when it's topical, I don't really see the point in that. Because it would definitely exceed the 70% maximum, but it is extremely effective. So.
Thank you, Rachel. I believe that 70% is just an arbitrary number that was tossed out by someone in the Department of Health who didn't understand exactly what they were doing. One of our typical concentrate tests, anywhere between 75 and 90%, and that's the medicine that our patients require, that we are extracting off the plant. To bring it back down to 70%, we have several options. We muddy it up by doing a longer soak time on our extraction, which brings more plant fats and lipids into the end product, which is the opposite of what we're trying to do. Or we incorporate CBD plant matter into our extraction because the 70% specifically states THC, and we add CBD to the end product to meet that number. It's just an arbitrary number that someone made up. It makes absolutely no sense.
I think with this, it's a concentrated.
This is Ben Barreras.
Effort to remove BHO and RSO from the program. I think they are specifically targeting this medicine because of how effective it is, because it's going to be taking away from cancer research and all other kinds of pharmaceutical companies that market opiate-based products, that we are showing that BHO and RSO is far more effective than, and has far more less damaging side effects than these cancer pills and pain pills that they put people on. I think we are just going to be creating more of a black market with this. I think we are endangering our patient base by limiting our extracts and concentrates. If the patient cannot get a strong concentrate at their legal producer's office, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the street. They're going to go to their own whim to get it done. And then we might have more explosions like this. And I really don't think that you want to be responsible as a legislator for putting that evil on people. We have a group of professionals right here that know how to do this and get it done right and provide safe medicine to our patient base. And by limiting it, you are endangering their lives.
Follow that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I agree. So I'm Alex. I'm with Bang Chocolate. I think we hit on some really good points here. I mean, whole plant extractions. There's tons of medicine throughout the entire plant that's important. The legal side of it is an interesting debate as well. You are going to open up to black market parties. People are going to look for what medicine helps them. You're going to be looking for it. If you can't find it at a dispensary in a safe place, then you're going to look elsewhere. And then the idea of diluting something that you've worked very hard to make a pure, safe medicine. I think those are the top three. I hate to lean back on these people's answers, but those are really what I want to drive home, because that is what the industry will change.
Thank you.
So that was Alex from Bang. I misidentified him earlier as Eric, but it's Alex. And they all made very valid points. If the Department of Health, in their rush to a solution or a rush to confusion, decides to ban BHO here in New Mexico, there's going to be worse reaction by the public, and more accidents will happen when people try to make this stuff at home and they're not experts. Those are the kind of accidents that have been happening with BHO, or people at home trying to blast and not doing it in the right setting. That's happened all over the country. An extraction accident at a legal dispensary, licensed producer, I'm not sure has ever happened before. So, let's not rush to a solution that will hurt patients even more. Next up, some testing we learned at the Women Grow event is being done. Testing's being done by one of the state universities, which is not really approved. But here's this. Take a listen.
So New Mexico State University is doing testing for a good amount of the producers for scientific purposes. They're doing this testing not just for daily potencies and microbe testing. They don't want to monopolize the market in that way, because they feel that they already have a benefit and that they have a head start on other labs because they're federally funded. So they have all the equipment right there, and they could undercharge and get rid of any other lab that's in the industry by charging, a couple bucks, because they can't even really take money from this industry because it's a cannabis industry and they are federally funded. So there's a lot of complications right now with working with a state lab, and they're trying to do it under the umbrella of research rather than just mass producing test results. And so that is helping us be able to develop larger profiles and a greater understanding of what these strains are. And what they're looking to do is get a little bit more away from the sativa and indica side of things that we all throw out and have no idea what that really means inside a person, and to use a better spectrum where we know the genetics, we know the genetic mapping, and we can form these linkages, and then from there understand how those genetic mappings affect different conditions and interact in the human body. So that's the purpose of working with NMSU, and it's a little bit complicated right now because they're not legally allowed to accept product. And And so they're working with the Department of Health to be able to do that. It's not because of federal funding issues, it's because they're not yet approved as a Department of Health lab, and they're not patients. So here we are handing over cannabis to the public, essentially. And so even though they don't want to smoke it and roll it and get high, and we're even adding acetone to the products in order for them to test, then how much is the acetone affecting the test? And then also we can't add acetone to cannabis and hand it out to the public. So there's a lot that's getting figured out, and I think that there's a lot of high emotions right now in the industry, but there's going to be a lot of answers really soon too. And so people are frustrated, there's a lot of volatility, but with that comes a lot of changes, and good changes for New Mexico, and a lot of answers, I think.
So that was Rachel Spiegel of Verdes Foundation, one of the producers, and she also is running with her crew at the Women Grow Albuquerque. Testing is really important. Controversy all over the place in regards to pesticides and contaminants and heavy metals and all that stuff. Testing is important. I believe now here in New Mexico we've got Scepter Labs with a provisional approval, along with Steep Hill, and now some new company called SBS. So testing here in New Mexico is probably just around the corner. Now, this next one, these next two clips, the final clips that we have here, are very important. This first one has to do with no inspection on cannabis kitchens, which causes a problem. So listen to this one.
Do you have any equipment on your site? Rachel, do you have any equipment that needs to be inspected or gets inspected regularly?
No.
On the tincture making side?
No, not really. I mean, I use your basic kitchen setup. I mean, you know, and in reality, it's kind of funny because I don't know exactly what it is, but like the environment department has decided that they won't even come in and inspect our kitchens.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, it's kind of an interesting thing, and that's why self-regulation is the most important thing, is to know what you're doing, to know what you're working with, to know basic laboratory safety, you know, I mean, and even just refreshing your knowledge of the laboratory safety that you took in high school chemistry, that's really crucial. You know, you store your chemicals in the appropriate place. You store them in a fire-safe cabinet. You know, you make sure everything's clean and sanitized. It really, at this point, is self-regulated. I don't really work with equipment that's very, you know, I use induction burners. I don't even use an open flame or a stove. So everything's pretty safe. Yeah.
So that's a good point. The Environmental Health Department will not come in and do an inspection on a cannabis kitchen.
There are rules, however, that a cannabis kitchen, or actually a kitchen that's being used for non-cannabis, cannot be used for cannabis. So that's one of the rules. But the rules are vague here in New Mexico. As I've said a million times, and not only here in New Mexico, but all over the country, this is a pioneer industry. A lot of thought hasn't come into it yet, and it's costing people's lives and their health, and in trying to get cannabis, this great medicine, to them. So I wanted to know who inspected the New Mexico labs and approved them for BHO extraction. Here is my question and the answer at the event on Thursday.
I wanted to go down the line. This is a question, I think, from Larry Love that I would like for all of you guys to answer. Don't worry, it's an easy one. Who inspected and signed off on your extraction setup?
Well, we had two. So, like I said, we went with a company out of Ohio called
This is
Apex,
Alex from
who do
Bang.
supercritical CO2 extractions. They actually come down and do a pre-setup checkup, kind of, to where they check over all the valves and fittings, make sure everything's as it should be. And then as a site goes, Ken Groggle did. He came and did a walkthrough and saw our equipment and how we were doing things, looked for standard operating procedures and things like that.
I think the best thing you can do is self-education.
Ben.
Learning the extraction process for yourself. As a manager, as a company owner, you need to know what's going on in your lab. Just because you get some hotshot extractor coming in saying he knows the process, he's an expert, a master extractor. I know we like to throw the master term around in this industry, but understanding the process for yourself is definitely your greatest tool, because especially when it comes to something like butane, something as dangerous as that, you need to know it as an employer, as a business owner. And on top of that, Ken Grogel approved my lab.
Right. I agree with Ben completely. You know, self-education is our safest route here, and I think we realized that as of recent events. As far as coming in from the DOH and approving my equipment, our building gets audited occasionally, and I believe the intent of the DOH is to come in and count our plants, but they've never actually stopped to take a look at my area, my setup, my equipment, and exactly what I do. That being said, over many years I have over 400 closed-loop extractions under my belt.
Carlos Torres.
With absolutely zero issues. And that's simply because I want to stay alive. I want to stay in business. Yeah, you know, and we have to produce a clean, good product for our patients. At this time, we're gonna start speaking with our fire marshal where our building is, and the fire marshal where the incident recently occurred, who is the top tier fire marshal in Santa Fe, and we're going to start creating a safety protocol and standard operating procedure for all the shops to follow to avoid incidences like what happened recently.
Will that be instituted statewide?
I do not know. We're at the very beginning of the process.
Ken is of the mind that he is not trying to be the extraction expert. I've asked him, I've offered him my services to consult with him to ensure that all the other manufacturers' labs are up to snuff and have proper safety procedures in their lab, and he just kind of washed his hands of it.
They don't understand it.
No, they don't, and I don't think they intend to.
Very sad comments that the people running the medical cannabis program here in New Mexico don't know, and it almost seems like they don't care. Who's responsible? We need regulators. We need regulations. And we need them to be enforced. We don't want people to get hurt. We don't want them to lose their lives. Cannabis is supposed to help people, make them feel better. We need people that care. We need people that are running this industry to help save lives. We'll be right back after this.
Where the crime rate is rising, people out there fighting for their lives. And out on the streets, where the blood runs like water and decent people lock their doors and hide. We're living in fear, fighting for survival. Out there somewhere, we're living in this cold and concrete jungle where violence and trouble still prevail. And tell me, what can we do? Will we live with this cancer, or will we find an answer to the plague? For heaven's sake, people out there living in fear, fighting for survival, knowing that their rival is out there somewhere. We're living in fear, fighting for survival. Yeah, those streets are paved with crime and corruption. There's innocent people living in fear. Where is the justice? In this cold and concrete jungle where violence and troubles still prevail. And tell me, what can we do? Will we live with this cancer, or will we find an answer to the plague? For heaven's sake, people out there living in fear, hiding for survival, knowing that the rival is out there somewhere. We're living in fear, hiding for survival. Yeah, those streets are paved with crime and corruption. There's innocent people.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio. Radio. Show.
Thank you, Rachel Spiegel from Verity's Foundation and Women Grow. I believe they have meetings the first Thursday of every month. Check them out. It's a great organization. Thank you, Ben Barreras, Alex from Bang, Rachel and Carlos from Sacred Garden to explain your processes and the importance of this medicine and importance of concentrates and the importance of doing and extracting BHO the proper way. I want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you have any suggestions for a topic or a guest, write me at info@mmjradio.com, info@mmjradio.com. Don't forget my weekly Wednesdays with Larawana show on canawanabuy.com, canawanabuy.com for all of your cannabis needs, whether you're a patient, a dispensary, a head shop. Great products, fast shipping, great prices, canawanabuy.com. Also, replays on YouTube, LSLove88, MMJRadio.com, Roku box, on the US Weed channel, timeforhemp.com, all kinds of places. Check them out.
Shalom.